Ah, yes, indeed. I love it. I love it. Please, if you get the chance and you're in the, if you're in the San Antonio area, check out the Sons of Hercules because they're really nice guys too. Really, really good guys. You know, that was one of the cool things about going to the Vegas Shakedown. Just a couple weeks after 9/11, I was real worried about going. Went to Las Vegas, had a great time, met all these amazing musicians, and they're not huge popular bands. They weren't massive. Actually, the White Stripes played there, but they didn't have a record contract at that time. You just get to talk to them afterwards, and they're really nice. They've given you CDs. They gave me one of their CDs. I'm like, thank you guys. That's really cool. By the way, south of the border, just before we go into some of the stuff on the economy, aren't you glad to know that through the CIA and the DEA and so on, you get to work with Mexico south of the border to help continue the doesn't do anything war on drugs and cause more problems inside Mexico. Another leading cartel member, El Tuli, has been killed in Jalisco after El Mencho was killed. Yes, and some of our friends are, of course, at risk as they try to get back home after they went down to Anarchapulco. So thought I'd give you that information. The Special Forces of Mexico, with United States assistance, of course, killed a senior Jalisco New Generation cartel operative known as El Turi during an operation that followed the death of cartel boss Nemesio Seguera Cervantes. And no, he did not write that story about the man loving Dulcinea and tilting at windmills. Yes, indeed. That was one of the first magical realism books, actually, Don Quixote by Cervantes. Great book. Amazing book. So just to give you that information, let's talk a little bit about how they're saving us, not just from drugs, but from our own choices in the market other than drugs. Let's talk about the terrorism. Here it is. The stock markets, like anthropomorphic beasts, are fed by the Fed and friends. But even in the stock markets, the Trump tariff threats and instability continue to cause fear and hesitation. Shh. I'm sure Donald Trump will focus on that tonight. It's been a really, really great day. I really screwed up the stock markets. It's lockdown 2.0, but my friends are doing really well because they short bet. Mama loves the short bets. Here it is. Here's the headline. This comes to us from MSN Money. The Dow had its worst day yesterday in a month as Trump looks to impose replacement tariffs. But there's a curious thing about those replacement tariffs. Almost like if you went to a seance around 1910, you'd be like, I seem to see some wires and strings. Just quiet. You didn't see anything. That's right. Here it is, everybody. We'll give you the tariff situation and what the numbers are in a second, and talk to you about how one senator from Mississippi is claiming, hey, if you can't afford what you normally want to afford, just, it's fine. There's something cheaper out there. Go for something cheaper. Come on. I'm telling you, I'm a senator. It's for the best. Well, Donald Trump will be talking the best tonight, trying to make sure people overlook what happened yesterday. Trump opened up a new round of verbal attacks against the SCOTUS yesterday, days after the high court struck down, that being on Friday, his sweeping tariff program, actually only 1/3 of the sweeping tariff program, about half of the tariffs numerically, economically, mathematically. In posts on his Truth Social platform, Trump railed against what he called a ridiculous Supreme Court decision. Quote, as president, I do not have to go back to Congress to get approval for tariffs. You know that clause? That's clause 8 zillion in the Constitution. I'm a speed reader. I got to the end. It's right there. It's in fine print. Very, very fine print. He is kind of like a get smart, isn't he? Would you believe it's in Article 2? No, I wouldn't. Missed it by that much. That's right, Chief. Oh, man. You think he could do the speech under the cone of silence so nobody could hear him and just be sitting there, Oh, this is amazing. Check this out. The Dow Jones fell almost 900 points yesterday. Whoops. Yeah, that's right. Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 821.91 points, or almost 1.7%. To end at 48,804 for its worst performance since January 20th. The Standard & Poor's 500 and NASDAQ composite closed lower by 1% and 1.1% respectively. And the ICE US dollar index, that's not immigration customs, slipped 0.1%. Eric Dighton, the Boca Raton-based president and managing director at the Wealth Alliance, an investment advisory firm, said, "In my 40 years of doing this, markets hate uncertainty almost as much as they hate bad news." And that's exactly it. They can't, it's not just that they're getting ripped off, and you're getting ripped off as well, but that they can't predict the future. Future. And I said, as Trump likely prepares to push his new form of tariffs tonight across the board for all imports at 15%, well, here's a reminder of the fact that anyone telling others that consumers don't pay the tariffs is lying. Here's the headline. The White House still can't grasp that Americans pay U.S. tariffs. This is coming from the Cato Liberty blog. Now, the Cato blog, they've got a really good thing here just to show you. This is it. So I've got the actual study here from February 19th. They say, on the issue of who's paying the president's tariffs, the Trump administration has had a rough few weeks. Research keeps confirming what conventional economics has always predicted and what the administration has always denied. Americans pay America's tariffs. Yet, rather than reckon with this unsurprising yet inconvenient conclusion, White House officials have responded with misdirection, insults, maybe a bunch of thumbs down, and even a televised suggestion that some of the professional economists involved be punished. By the way, did any of you see that footage of very clearly Donald Trump calling in as something like Thomas Barron to C-SPAN? It's a name he's used before, and it's got Barron in it, like Barron Trump. He called in praising Donald Trump. I'll see if I can find it. I'll play for you tomorrow night. Anybody, if you've got it, put it in the link or whatever. Put it underneath in the comments in the Rumble chat. It's really, really funny. Hey, Brian, good to have you there, man. Welcome. Want to take a break out to salute the Brian, man. Thank you, Brian. And you guys have all made the past few months just wonderful. I really appreciate it. All right, so we're going to go back to Cato. And it's not next to the Roy Rogers anymore, but they're still serving up some good stuff once in a while from Cato. First up, White House Senior Counselor for Trade and Manufacturing, Peter Navarro, took to the Wall Street Journal to list, with a conspicuous lack of evidence, the various ways in which foreign exporters might absorb U.S. tariffs, leaving American companies and consumers off the hook. Yet, as Lindsay Combe, that's Lindsay Combe of the Cato Institute, pointed out in a new letter to the Journal, Navarro is correct that foreigners could theoretically bear tariffs' economic burden by lowering the all-in price they'd accept from U.S. consumers, but in reality, there's little evidence of this having broadly occurred last year. They also could try to subsidize their companies, and then what would the United States do? They'd impose even higher tariffs, claiming that these companies were getting assistance to dump on us. Again, I love it when Trump's like, they're ripping us off. You know how it is. Like I got $4 off when I went to CVS today because I have one of those CVS things. I got $4 off, and I was like, I walked away having saved $4. I'm like, darn it, I hate getting ripped off. Here's figure one just for Pete Navarro. I wish he were the guitarist for Jane's Addiction instead. No evidence that foreign exporters are broadly absorbing U.S. tariffs. Yes, here's the import price index. Hey, Donald, look at that. It's going up. Now, what happens? What happens when one of the big costs for your factors of production goes up? You have to reduce your other costs or pass those costs on to consumers who then have to reduce their costs. In the end, you know what it affects? I think it starts with an E. It's called employment. Again, these are the most fundamental aspects of economics. It's incredible. So Scott Lacombe of the Cato Institute says, overall, there's around 170. Oh, this is great, by the way. There's around 175 billion at stake, and the Trump administration could return most of it quickly and easily, as promised. Remember, they promised, well, we'll give it back. Since it won't, importers will fight in court, and that will inevitably sideline small firms that can't afford the lawyers. So guess who's going to be on the short end of the stick, on the poopy end? The small businesses that can't afford to recover any of this money, and the consumers who aren't going to get any money back. But the big companies, they will get the money. And the companies like, I don't know, maybe Howard Lutnick's Sons companies, they will recover because they purchased at about a 20% per. They'll recover at 80% or 100% on the money that they're going to get back. Yeah, so it's just great. It's fantastic. I want to read you one other item here that I think is relevant, okay? So let me give this to you. This is over here. This is cumulative refunds. Cumulative revenue from the tariffs the Supreme Court ruled illegal on Friday is now estimated to be $175 billion, okay? Now, there are some major problems. Even in the best case scenario, the streamlined CIT process, that's the return of this money, cooperative CBP, no government appeals, that's if there aren't any government appeals, right? Which you know they're going to be. Trade attorneys estimate it will take 12 to 18 months before even the big pocket importers see any refunds. In either scenario, the outcome would be remarkably unfair. Large corporations have the resources to fight for a refund and wait for it to arrive. And they also are more likely to have the clout to have passed on tariff costs to their consumers. Smaller companies have none of these advantages and could spend more on legal fees and than they are owed by the government. Very good point. Again, it's essentially what we're seeing here is rent seeking in the return of the money, and essentially you've got in a way what some economists have noted with the big money, the big pocket people being able to take advantage of something and gaining at the expense of the dispersed people who are suffering. So it's public choice theory and economics played out right in front of us. Frank Knight would be, I think he'd be talking about this if he were in class right now. So this makes the refund process difficult, and it is effectively a tax on small businesses and a subsidy to larger ones. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely right. So thank you, Cato Institute. Good job there. I want to give you a little bit more from Scott as well. He did a lot of work here. He says, through the whole tariff inflation thing, though the whole tariff inflation thing is an international distraction from the policies and real harms, of course, because it's not really inflation, as Ron Paul has pointed out. We shouldn't expect Trump's new tariffs to cause major so-called inflation in the months ahead. In other words, a decrease in the buying power of your dollar. And again, this is where Milton Friedman screwed up in his book, Money Mischief, when he tried to tell people that a good way to think of inflation is an increase in the cost of fuel oil, because that's not inflation. Inflation is the inflation of the money supply, which decreases the buying power of your money because it's now bidding against all these new dollars that have been created on a curve of production that isn't increasing by the same amount. So you're seeing a decreasing in the buying power of your money. That's inflation, the inflation of the money supply, which leads to higher prices because things are bid up. And then eventually people pull back their spending. So you get the bust cycle after the initial boom. And it always happens. That's why in Wizard of Oz, you had you liquidated her, eh? You got to liquidate. You got to sell those resources that have been misappropriated and have been spent through the moral hazard, time and money and natural resources. And you got to liquidate those things at prices that closely reflect their value, which is much lower. He said, probably the most annoying part, though, is that these technical details just aren't something that matters to the vast majority of Americans. Sure, if you're a Federal Reserve watcher, financial journalist, or investment banker, the precise trajectory and composition of our nationwide inflation indices is important. But again, it's very important to get these lessons through because, yes, you will see higher prices if gas prices go up. But your money is buying something intangible now. It's buying access to the gasoline. It's buying potentially access to future gasoline, maybe that you can't get. You'll be able to lock it in at a certain price. So it's not decreasing the buying power of your dollar. It's creating a dearth of what you want, and your dollar is going to have to serve a different way. It's not decreasing the buying power. It's just buying something different. So that's, I think, an important thing to bring up. And there's a lot more on the tariff issue that I want to give to you to close this off, because it's a great economic lesson, because we can look at the statutes themselves. As he mentions, a very good deep dive in the IEEPA tariff refund issue right here. It's a Hail Mary from Congress to the courts. And he's got this. Says, absent a Hail Mary from Congress to the courts, the Trump administration's sore loser refund fight sets it up to steal $30 billion in taxes it illegally collected from the U.S. small businesses last year. So there we go here. Now, if this is all returned, it's not going to go to any of the little guys. He says, the best information we have on this, the best data, is that the 1,000 importers that had the highest volume of tariff payments accounted for approximately 80% of the total dollar value of these tariffs. And so if we do the math and just pick the midpoints of the estimates, let's say there's been $150 billion worth of tariffs collected since the beginning of 2025. That means that there's $125 that goes to these big companies that presumably have their trade counsel, and they're going to be fine. And then there's another $30 billion, it should be $125 billion. There's another $30 billion that is going to everybody else. Now, some of those at the top end, the 1,000 and first largest importer, maybe can hire a Wall Street law firm. But there's going to be, I think it's fair to say, tens of billions of dollars that the government has taken illegally, and it won't be recovered because the people who had it taken can't go for the legal representation. So they're not going to win in court. They're not going to be able to get it back unless some of the larger companies form some sort of a class action suit and allow them in. That's a possibility, but I don't see that happening because it would be better for them if they knock out their smaller competition. And again, despite the 15% promise, it's actually starting at 10%, which is quite interesting. This is a weird one. And Peter Roman had this to say. This is from NBC News. Speaking of messes, Trump's global tariff takes effect at actually 10%, according to NBC News, despite the announcement that he gave everybody that it would be 15%. I don't know why. Now, the effect of some of that, again, let's go with 3 beats here. Let's go with this. Ford Motors. Ford to close $5.8 billion plant, cutting 1,600 jobs amid tariff fallout. And it's good that some people are putting this into the headlines. I appreciate that. And I said, mixed with the tariff terrorism, we get the added insult that this Mississippi GOP senator told people that if they can't afford meats, just get another source of protein. How about human beings? They're already gouging us enough. She smiled while saying it. So let me show you the link. I've actually recorded it and amped it up a little bit. Daily Beast has got this. Now, what's curious is I'm pretty sure that if Joe Biden were imposing these tariffs, they'd be going and promoting the union measures, the pro-union measures of Joe Biden and applauding these measures. But Donald Trump's doing it. But we can see they are exposing this MAGA senator from Mississippi. Her name is Cindy Hyde Smith. And yes, she gets applause and accolades for the hyphen. So let me show this to you. Give it to you, as the B-52s would say. Give it to me, give it to me, give it to me. And hand it on over to you. Move it on over, rock it on over, move on. Here we go. Trump's economic ignorance. Yes, as enormous as his ego. So what are we talking about? Well, don't forget, everybody, we've got this. And we'll get to this Mississippi senator in a minute.
Without tariffs, this country would be in such trouble right now. I have the right to put tariffs on for national security purposes, countries that have been ripping us off.
Amazing. It's incredible. He just has absolutely no clue. And now Trump tonight will proudly stand on a mountain of economic ruin. So let's talk about this senator as I scrolled up to make sure you could see her name, and we go up to the video that the Russians and I recorded today.
With the Gulf of America right out our door right here, beautiful Gulf Coast, no permitting, no drilling for 4 years.
Now, she makes some good points about Trump opening things up for energy and things like that, but watch how she utterly dismisses your inability to be able to buy what you could have bought for a lot less a year ago.
No.
What do you think Republicans are doing right now? You're involved closely with agriculture. You're on the committee. Price of food is high. We just did a story this week on price of beef continuing to go up. What are Republicans doing to get this cost of living under control?
Well, the good thing is we passed what we call the One Big Beautiful Bill. There are so many things in there. Just the child tax credits, that will affect 40 million families. There are all the reduction to make the cuts permanent. It is so many opportunities there that once that they go into play, just with getting your tax refund in 2026 is going to be bigger. And once we can get those things implemented, you're going to see a difference. But right now, the cost of fuel, everything in this place at one time was on a truck. So anytime you go to purchase anything, if you're going to build anything, the price of fuel affects everything.
Which, of course, means that it's very important to continue blocking Russian fuel, right? Of course it is. Yeah, I'm glad the host asked her about, oh, that's right, he didn't bother.
So with that being down, with the Gulf of America right out our door right here, beautiful Gulf Coast, no permitting, no drilling for 4 years, no permitting. So now that we can undo some of those cumbersome things that restricted energy production, you're even going to see that even in a more significant way. But it is on everybody's mind. It certainly is me at my house. And, you have so many proteins to choose from, and all commodities go through peaks and valleys. It is a global market.
Amazing. She's just totally oblivious. She's got a 6-figure salary. She's in the U.S. Senate. And her earnings come off of your sweat and toil. And she's talking about how concerned she is. Oh, we certainly are concerned in my household. Yeah, as she spouts off that childish lingo of the Gulf of America. And then she talks about, well, there are a lot of sources of protein out there. Really? Yeah. Just ask the soybean farmers, right? It's just incredible. She's so utterly disconnected. And it's amazing because I thought that the Biden supporters were, clearly deluding themselves that Joe Biden's economic policies were going to be helpful in any way. And then you could see that Biden was in trouble mentally and so on. And I said, well, maybe he shows some flashes here and there, but you could just see after a while that some of these people, especially in the news media, with, Morning Joe, he's the sharpest. This is the best Biden ever. Just like, wow. And this is the MAGA equivalent of it. It's an utter denial of reality. It's just so completely disconnected. And this is damaging to you, right? Let me give you a bit of information because she brought up a couple positive things. But systemically, what I think is curious is a lot of people debate the policy changes, not actually going down into whether or not those policies are predicated on a faulty foundation, which is why is the United States government in D.C. dictating whether or not somebody can drill someplace for oil? Again, she swears the oath to the Constitution. I don't swear the oath to the Constitution. And the Constitution doesn't allow them to control the Gulf of anything. Doesn't matter what the name of it is. You can't do it. And land, they can't control Anwar. They can't control vast swaths they call national monuments. Because, again, they can only control 3 forms of land. A center of 10 square miles for the capital of the country, territories before they become states, and military garrisons. So the Gulf of anything doesn't matter. Anwar doesn't matter. They're supposed to be up to the people in the region. And if there's a problem between the states, then after the fact, in a remedial way, they can turn to Congress to help handle the dispute. That's what Article 1, Section 8 is about for people who bother to read their Constitution. And they also could note that the word immigration isn't in it. Just saying. It's just, sorry, I'm just saying it. What can you say? And don't conflate naturalization with immigration, please. It's kind of like saying territory and state are the same thing. They're not. So the federal government can control things inside a territory, but when a territory becomes a state, they're supposed to enter with all the so-called rights and privileges of every other state, which means they don't have to cede land. And even if they could, the feds couldn't control it. And then the Constitution clearly delineates all the enumerated powers that those wonderful people stole from people in the 18th century when they wrote the Constitution and claimed power over people. Okay? And then they said, we won't do anything else. 9th and 10th Amendments, leave it up to the states. That's why immigration is a state issue, because they didn't put it in the Constitution and it hasn't been amended. I'm just saying, this is their way to do it, they tell us. So she doesn't care. She doesn't care. She'll talk about the Gulf and we're changing the policies. Should we be happy that our slave overlords have opened up another section of grass where we could possibly grow some, I don't know, summer squash for ourselves? Or maybe giant corporations could do it? It's just incredible. It's just incredible. They do not care at all. They don't care. However, let me talk about the tax thing. Just to give her a little bit of play here, here's some info about the taxes. I said, mixed with that terrorism, we have her. She said a couple good things. I said, for context, let's look at the Trumpers' claim let's look at what the Trumpers claim will happen for the tax brackets this year as we head towards March Madness. For single filers, everyone walking a single file in that Pink Floyd meat grinder. Just keep walking. Oh, man. Yeah, so low earners, the ones according to the United States government that earn $25,000 a year to $50,000 approximately, they will see. Let me see. They will save about $245 a year. Okay, so keep that in mind. Because remember, when they talked last week, we talked about regressive and progressive. The Marxist idea of a progressive tax is supposedly, they want to focus on that because they think that they can tell somebody who earns 10% more or 3% more or something, how much they value that 10% more than somebody else. Like they can say, I can tell you how much you value your money. That's the progressive tax thing. The rich can pay more. I don't know what that guy's planning to do with his money. Maybe he has a big family. Maybe someone's sick in his family. Maybe he has plans to start a business. It's not my place. He earned it. The whole progressive, regressive thing is stupid. But if you're going to go by that, politicians, then just remember that those people who are going to save $245 for their year of taxes, yeah, they're paying over $1,000 more in tariff taxes because Trump raised taxes the highest of any president in 70 years. Yeah. So that's a little something to keep in mind. Now, the people who are the lower middle earners, up to $50,000 a year, they will save about $1,000. That's $1,000. So they're still on the outs because they spent probably over $1,000 more this year in tariff taxes.